Celia had worked the graveyard shift at the small convenience store for nearly a year, and most nights were uneventful. She'd sit behind the counter, scrolling on her phone, occasionally glancing at the security cameras. But every night at exactly 2:45 a.m., a man in a worn gray hoodie entered the store. He never spoke beyond a mumbled, "Thank you." He'd grab a bottle of water, pay an exact change, and stare at her just long enough to make her skin crawl. Then, he'd leave without a word. One night, after weeks of enduring the eerie encounters, Celia worked up the nerve to ask him why he came every night. As he set the water on the counter, she blurted, "Why do you keep coming here at the same time? What do you want?" The man's eyes locked onto hers. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Don't lock the doors tonight." Celia froze. Her heart pounded as he turned and walked out into the darkness. Celia immediately called the police, explaining the man's cryptic warning. The dispatcher tried to reassure her, suggesting it was likely a prank or the man was mentally ill. Still, they promised to send an officer to check on her later. By 2:30 a.m., no one had shown up. Celia locked the doors anyway, her hands trembling as she flipped the bolt. She double-checked the cameras and kept the phone close. At exactly 2:45 a.m., the man returned. He stood outside the glass doors, staring at her with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. Then, with deliberate movements, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small device, and pressed a button. The store went pitch black. The hum of the refrigerators and the flickering fluorescent lights ceased. The only illumination came from the faint glow of her phone. In the dark, Celia's breath quickened as she heard the sound of glass shattering. She grabbed a flashlight from under the counter, its weak beam cutting through the blackness. The man in the hoodie appeared near the counter, his face pale and grim. "I told you not to lock the doors," he hissed. "They'll break in anyway. I was trying to keep you safe." Before she could ask what he meant, the sound of footsteps filled the store. Many footsteps. Turning her flashlight toward the aisles, Celia saw figures emerging from the shadows. Their faces were obscured by crude masks, and their movements were unnatural, almost jerky. The masked figures spread out, knocking over shelves and blocking exits. One of them lunged at Celia, but the man in the hoodie shoved her aside and tackled the attacker. "Run!" he shouted. Celia scrambled toward the back exit, her flashlight flickering. She could hear grunts and screams behind her as the man fought them off. Reaching the exit, she found it locked, bolted from the outside. Desperate, Celia grabbed a fire extinguisher and smashed the glass on the emergency exit. As she climbed through, she caught a glimpse of the man in the hoodie. He was surrounded by the masked figures, their hands clawing at him as he yelled for her to go. She ran into the night, barefoot and bleeding from cuts on her hands and knees. Behind her, the store was eerily quiet. Celia flagged down a passing trucker who called the police. When they arrived, the store was empty. The shelves were untouched, the glass she'd shattered was intact, and the power was back on. Security footage confirmed her story, up to a point. It showed the man disabling the power, her grabbing the flashlight, and the masked figures entering. But at the moment of the attack, the cameras cut to static. No trace of the man in the hoodie was ever found. The masked figures? The police dismissed them as a fabrication, though Celia knew the truth. A week later, Celia received a package at her apartment. Inside was a single water bottle and a note in shaky handwriting. "They're not done with you yet.